Hi folks, Chris from Mammoth Interactive here. Today I'm going to be talking to you about divs. Now, divs are an important part of every HTML page, and what a div is, it's basically a container that can hold other HTML elements inside of it. Now divs are used to essentially divide the HTML into different sections. These sections can then be styled all at once using CSS, and you can do all kinds of different things. So for example, you can change the font style, you can change the background color, you do all sorts of really interesting things with divs. And they're actually very easy to use. So let's go ahead and jump in here. I'm going to show you how to create a couple divs, how to style those divs, and that's going to be today's lesson. So as you can see, I'm starting here on JS Bin. Great resource to kind of practice your HTML, CSS, all kinds of stuff on. And as you can see, I just have the blank default page here. We have a couple things it automatically puts in here. JS Bin, for example, for the title. And you know what? I'm just going to rename the title to divs. And as you can see up here, it automatically updated the title in my Chrome window to divs. So how do you create a div? Well, just like using any other HTML element. So first of all, you just define div. And best practice really is to always close off your HTML elements as soon as you open it up. Especially with divs, you don't want to have an open div hanging around because you don't want to write, say, 50 lines of code and then say, oh geez, I forgot to close my div. Where is that? Because your CSS is going to be styling things you don't necessarily want it to style. So just always be sure to close off your tags whenever you open one up. So what can we put inside a div? Well, we can actually put pretty much anything inside of a div. So let's put a couple things here. So first of all, I'm going to put a header, an H1 here. So this guy's just going to be saying, hi there. All right, and we're going to close this guy off here. And as you can see from the output over here, JS Bin is really cool in that it generates the output right away for you. And I'm just going to get rid of this for now. So hi there. Let's put a paragraph or two in there. So let's see, this guy is I'm a paragraph. Alrighty. Close that off. Looks like I misspelled something here. All right, I'm a paragraph. Let's throw a link in there as well. So links are done like this in HTML. So this is open using an A tag, and then href. This is where you would normally put your web address. So for example, http://www.yoursite.com. For now, because we're just using it as a placeholder, I'm just going to use this £. You can do this on your own site. It's kind of a good practice to kind of practice with, so you don't actually end up linking somewhere you may not necessarily want to if you end up putting it up on your site. So I'm just going to call this test link. You know what? Let's call it test link 1. Close that off. All right, so you can see that even though I put div here and here, it doesn't really seem to be doing anything. Well, that's because we haven't styled it yet. But first, let's put in a couple other divs first here. So we'll put in another div, and of course I will close that off right away. All right, and so what I'm going to do here, you can actually put all kinds of different H sizes. So that's referring to the H1 I have up here. Let's see what the H3 size looks like. H1 is the biggest size, so H3 is going to be a little bit smaller. And this guy's going to be saying, I'm an H3. All right, close that off. And as you can see on the right here, yeah, it's a fair bit smaller. Nice size there for an item lower down on the page. And I'll put another P tag in here. And this guy will be saying, I belong to div number 2. Close that off here. All right. Finally, let's put in one more div here just so we can kind of practice with a couple divs. All right, and what do we have in here? Let's see what the H5 looks like. I am H5. He's pretty excited there, so let's close that off, H5. That's not too big actually. Looks almost like it might be a bit smaller actually than the normal P size. All right, we'll put in a P tag here as well. I'm just going to scroll down a bit. I'm in div 3. Okay, so here we have 3 divs. Kind of hard to tell they're in divs though. And again, that's because we haven't really applied any styling to it. We haven't done anything with the divs. It's always actually not a bad idea just to put stuff into a div anyway, because you might come back later, you might want to move it around, you might want to switch it up a bit. So it couldn't hurt to throw it in a div. So now we have our divs. Let's take a look at some styling. Before that though, I'm going to want a way to identify these divs, because when I'm selecting it using CSS, I need to know which div I'm targeting. Now in my CSS, I could just call div. So I just open up the CSS tab, and if I call div, the problem with this is this will target every single div on the page, which is usually not what I want to do. So for example, if I want my divs to have all the same font color, I could just say color, oh, I don't know, let's go with yellow. See, this has targeted every single div on the page and turned it yellow. Not ideal. So I'm going to want a way to be able to distinguish those divs. And I'm just going to erase this and get rid of this tab for now. So what we can do is we can use classes. Now classes, in case you haven't come across them yet, classes you use in your HTML, and then you can call those classes in your CSS, and it's basically a way of identifying a specific element or item on the page. Now you may have heard of IDs before, but today I'm just going to be using classes. So div class, and this you can actually name these classes whatever you like. So this one's going to be called, just for the sake of simplicity, div1. Okay, so that's div1. Can you guess what this one will be? You got it, it's div2. And down here, div class equals div3. Now, on your actual website, you will probably want something a bit more descriptive than this. Let's say you have, I don't know, 50 divs, 40 divs. You're going to want to be able to distinguish those. So a good one would be, for example, div navbar, div main content, etc., etc. But for today's example, I'm just going to keep it simple. We only have 3 divs, so it's going to kind of make sense to us just to name them div1, 2, and 3. All right, so I'm going to go to my CSS here. Now, let's say I want to do something to div1 and only to div1. Well, the way you select a class in CSS is you just start it with a dot, and then you just refer to the class name over here, as you can see on the left. So div1, this is what I named it. If I had named it something different, then of course I would just put a different name over here. All right, so let's see. What do I want to do to div1? Well, you know what? To kind of differentiate them, I'm just going to put a border around each of them. And I'm going to have them, each of them have a little bit of a different border. So let's see, border. Let's see what happens if I say this. 1 pixel solid black. What does that look like? All right, so as you can see, the border is 1 pixel wide all the way around, and it's solid, and I call it black. Now, of course, you can play around with this. I could have made this 10 pixels. You can see that that's a very thick border. You notice I also put solid. I could have put, say, dashed. That'll dash the border. You could have also specified a different color. So 10 pixels, solid, orange. All right, so that's kind of cool. But you know what? I kind of like my original. So we'll go with 1 pixel, solid, and black. Always a good choice for a border. All right, so it's a bit easier to see now that I put this border on the first div. All right, so you can tell that it wasn't visible before, but with the border, it's easier to see. Okay, so there is a div there. All right, what else do we want to do here? Well, let's change the font color. So we'll say color. Let's make it gray. I'm a big fan of gray font there. So there you go. And let's align the center. So let's say text align center. And there you can see that our text is now aligned in the center of the box. Right, pretty good. And let's say I want to select an element that's inside the div. Right, so we have this link right here. It's not an actual link, but it's mimicking one because I put this hashtag symbol in there. And you know what? I'm not a big fan of the default purple highlighting or underlining that goes on there. So I can actually select that, and I just say, okay, so inside of div1, there's an A, right? Referring to this A tag over here, ahref. And if I say text decoration none, that'll remove the underline. Other examples of text decorations would be like, for example, line through. Not really what we want to do, but there's a couple others. For now, though, we'll just say text decoration none. And I can also change the color here. So I'm not a big fan of the purple. So let's just make it black. Kind of hard to tell it's a link. So you know what? Let's make it light blue. All right, not super easy on the eyes, but at least you can kind of tell that it's different from the rest of the paragraph. All right, so that covers div 1. Now let's do some changes to div 2. So .div 2. And what should we do here to div 2? I'm just going to move some of this stuff over. Bring this over here. Div 2. Well, we can do all kinds of stuff. Let's make the font style different. You know what? Let's make it italic. As you can see, because I'm targeting everything in the div, it all became italic. Other examples would be, for example, bold, but italic is a pretty good one. Go with that. And let's put a border around this one. So border, let's say 2 pixels, dashed, black sounds good to me. Right, there we go. There's our border. Let's make this one a little bit thinner though. So we'll say width, and I'm going to say 50%. And the reason I say 50% is because no matter the size of the window, this should take up 50% of the initial size. And this will be useful later on when we're learning about responsive web design. You can see if I resize this, it automatically resizes so that it's 50%. Even when it gets really tiny, it's still 50%. So useful attribute, we'll definitely be talking a lot about that in a further lesson. For now, this should do it. And then of course we can come down to the last div. So .div 3. And what do we want to do? You know what, let's put a, instead of a border, let's put a background. So background color, let's see, maybe orange. Okay, so again, it's kind of nice there to see what the limits are, but orange, not the easiest on the eyes. So I wonder what gray will look like. All right, that's not too bad. This one, let's make the width, I don't know, 25%. All right, so there you can see that now I have all my divs styled separately. From here, if I wanted to, I could go in and play and change them around. Say, put this one on the left and this one on the right, etc., etc. But as a basic intro to divs, this should be a good introduction. And that's going to do it for today's lesson. For more, visit mammoethinteractive.com. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.